Hello, I'm Martine Croxall. In this episode of Extreme Weather, farmers suffer in Mexico's worst drought for 70 years. Authorities declare a natural disaster as floods hit Australia. Sighs of relief in ski resorts as snow finally falls in the Alps. And we look back at one of the busiest hurricane seasons on record. It's being called the forgotten drought, as dust storms and water shortages make the headlines in Texas. Over the border in Mexico, they're suffering the worst dry spell in 70 years. Some estimates say more than 800,000 hectares of crops have been lost and around 1.7 million head of livestock have died because of a lack of food and water. According to Mexico's National Water Commission, around 1,500 villages in 5 states near the border with the US are relying on tanker deliveries of drinking water. Meteorologists blame the La Niña weather pattern for the drought and predict conditions are unlikely to improve for several months. Residents of Southern California are used to the Santa Ana winds that arrive at this time every year, bringing hot, dry gusts from the Mojave Desert. But according to the National Weather Service, this year's winds have been the strongest for a decade, with gusts of more than 150 kilometres an hour. Pasadena, northeast of Los Angeles, bore the brunt. At one stage, around 340,000 people were without power and streets were blocked by fallen trees. City officials say at least 40 buildings had been so badly damaged they'd have to be demolished. In Australia, officials have declared a state of natural disaster across northern New South Wales after flash floods inundated several towns and at least 2 people died. The state's cotton crop has been particularly badly affected, with one growers' association estimating losses of up to $50 million. At one stage, around 18,000 hectares of cotton were underwater. 300 millimetres of rain fell in a week around Wagga Wagga, and the town of Glen Innes broke a 130-year-old record for the most rain to fall on a single day at this time of year. So the Atlantic hurricane season is over for another year, and it's been pretty full on. According to the National Hurricane Centre, 2011 was the 6th busiest season since records began in 1851. There were 19 tropical storms, of which 7 became hurricanes. Satellite images clearly show the path of Hurricane Irene tracking up the east coast of the US in August, the first hurricane to hit New Jersey for over a century. Irene claimed more than 50 lives and caused over $10 billion worth of damage. Just a week later, Hurricane Katia's effects were felt as far away as Scotland and Russia. The NOAA describes the 2011 season as very active, and a team from the University of Colorado are predicting the 2012 hurricane season will once again be more active than normal. So, are we seeing more hurricanes than usual?
Well, in the Atlantic, it's been a very active season. We had 19 tropical storms, although we have to bear in mind that a lot of those storms were actually fairly weak and short-lived. So actually, if you look at some other measures of activity, such as the number of hurricanes, or look at the duration and strength of the storms, it was still above average, but by not such a huge margin. But if you widen things out and look at the whole globe, in fact, it's been fairly quiet in many other parts of the world. For example, in the Western Pacific, there's only been 19 tropical storms. We would normally expect a number somewhere near 27 or so. And in some other regions, it's been quiet as well. So actually, this more than offsets the high activity in the Atlantic. So actually, globally, in the last year or so, it's actually been relatively quiet in terms of tropical cyclones.
Hurricanes form when clusters of thunderstorms gather over warm waters in the Atlantic or eastern Pacific. Water vapour pushes up from the warm ocean surface and fuels the storm. As more air is sucked in, the warm, moist air starts to rise and spin. Clouds then form as the air cools at the top. As the hurricane gathers strength, a small area is created in the centre known as the eye, where the weather is calm and clear. Surrounding the eye is the eye wall, the most violent part of the storm. On each edition of Extreme Weather, we're taking a look at some of the harshest places on Earth, the wettest, driest, coldest and hottest, and what it's like to live in them. Death Valley in the United States is often said to be the hottest place on the planet, but the record for the highest temperature of all time is actually held by Libya. A thermometer-busting 57.8 degrees Celsius was recorded by a meteorological station in El Azizia in 1922. But for the highest average temperature in the world, we travel to Ethiopia. At Dallol in the Dennekill Depression, the land dips 116 metres below sea level and the temperature soars to an average 34.4 degrees Celsius. Finally, in this edition of Extreme Weather, ski slopes in the European Alps have remained stubbornly free of snow after the driest and warmest autumn since 1864. According to the World Meteorological Organization, Switzerland is heading for one of its 3 driest years on record. Many resorts had to delay the start of the ski season, which traditionally begins at the end of November. Others, such as Davos Klosters, brought in dozens of snow machines so they could open a few higher slopes. World Cup ski races due to take place in the French Alps have been moved to Colorado. The first major snow dump of the season did, however, finally arrive a month behind schedule. That's all for this edition. Don't forget, if you've got some great footage of extreme weather events in your country, be sure to let us know.